killer in middle-aged men right now is suicide. And I think a lot of dudes don't go to the hospital, which was the most dangerous thing that happened to me, was going to the hospital, because then they made me feel like a pussy. I actually drove myself to the hospital at one point. I was in a mental health crisis. It was tough to do as a man who's from a small town in the prairies to say, holy shit, I have a mental health issue. I need help. That's a rare thing. And I drove to Regina and I was suicidal. I went into the emergency room and finally someone came in who was a psychiatrist, basically said, well, did you attempt suicide? And I was like, no, but I want to die. And he's like, well, okay, well, unless you've committed suicide, we can't bring you into the hospital.
That's wild.
I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, that's crazy.
I was like, well, yeah, okay, I haven't attempted. He's like, do you have a plan? I'm like, I have like 10 plans. Like, it depends where I am in the day. You know what I mean? He's like, okay, well, just promise me you won't hurt yourself. Keep taking your meds. I was already on meds. Keep seeing your counselor. Bye. I'm like, okay. So then I felt really embarrassed. I felt embarrassed that I went to the hospital because, it took a lot for me to actually ask for help, just to be told, you're just being silly. Go home. That's what it felt like, right? So for the next year, I just spiraled downwards to the point that I did have a suicide attempt. I ended up having like 3 police officers grapple me, and I tried to stab my brother, and it just turned into a shit show.
Welcome to Suicidal, the show where we learn from the past and imagine the future. Today, we have a Canadian podcaster on our show by the name of Todd Rennebohm. He is the host of a show called Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. He has gone through many difficulties and traumas in his past life, and his podcast is there to interview different people who have also gone through different mental health issues and struggles of their own. And he wants to raise more awareness and understanding for mental health. But today we decided to bring him on so that he can give us his story, his struggles that he's dealt with in his life, so that, we can also just learn from that and also better ourselves as people. And so today, I want to thank you, Todd, for coming on our show. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks for coming on, Todd. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you for having me.
It's great. And before we get into, more deeper into your story, I want to ask you, regarding your podcast, right? Mm-hmm. Why did you start this podcast? Does it help in any way to relieve some of the feelings and emotions that you feel in your life?
Yeah. I mean, I was advocating for, it was probably about 4 or 5 years before I started the podcast. And I'd been doing quite a bit of speaking and other things. And I actually wrote a kid's book. And so I had all these projects, and I was like kind of bored of my own story a little bit. I was like, I want to hear other people's stories. And this was during COVID, so I couldn't really go out anyway and talk to people. So I used to play in bands and stuff, so I had all the gear, like I had microphones and all computers and all that stuff. So I thought, well, let me try a few episodes. And at first I thought it would be like maybe just a short series, maybe 10 episodes, and would be all Saskatchewan-based people and Saskatchewan-based stories about mental health. And then after about 2 interviews, I realized I really like doing this. So next week, June 20-something, is actually my 100th episode.
Nice. Congrats. That's great.
Yeah, thanks.
Wow, congrats on that, yeah.
Well, I got addicted, even though I got over a different addiction. I got addicted to podcasting.
Yeah, I think that's a healthier addiction, probably.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think your story on how you started podcasting is actually similar to ours a little bit. We started during COVID as well.
Yeah.
Heiko here does some music production, and he had all the gear as well, so we kind of have a similar start from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and maybe like tying just to like podcasting in general, what would you tell people that are maybe a bit reluctant to, start a podcast or do one themselves? What would you say?
Well, you don't know if you're going to like it or not until you actually start it, for one thing. Like I wasn't sure. And I mean, I don't know. I'm scared of my answer might actually make it even more reluctant for people to start, because it is a lot of work. And I mean, I'm not real good at the IT stuff, so I have to do a lot of figuring out of the audio software and stuff. And, but yeah, just dive head first into it. What the hell?
Yeah,
that's
just might as well try. Yeah,
exactly. At least the trying part. A lot of people just don't want to try because they're scared or other reasons, right?
I was scared too, but it turned out to be somewhat easier than I thought. The first few, but now that I try to have an episode out every week, it starts to feel a little more like work. But you don't have to do one every week, right? You can do it's up to you. There's no rules.
Us too, in the beginning when we were doing it, we did have sort of a stricter schedule to like post by every Sunday we needed to post one. But now we're making sure to take our time and put more emphasis on the quality instead of the quantity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think maybe why some people have trouble, starting and maybe are reluctant is because there's a lot of judgment online, right? Like a lot of comments and a lot of that shit that could
Nastiness
be nasty, and people have all kinds of opinions and stuff. And I think, when you get sucked into that, it could be hard to get out, right? I mean,
And it can affect your mental health.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
It kind of comes into that. So we do our best to almost like not look at the comments too much. We look at them, but not every single day.
Don't get too into
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Or nobody comments at all, and then you're like, oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
three
you're
people
sad.
are listening.
You're sad. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, my mom liked it.
Yeah, exactly. It starts from there.
Yeah.
Was there a specific moment in your childhood that sparked that downfall into mental health issues, and where did it all begin for you, you think?
Yeah. I mean, as far as I can remember, I was a pretty anxious kid, and I think it was grade 5. I was actually diagnosed with a stomach ulcer. That's how bad my worrying was. Like in high school, it subsided somewhat, but that's when I started drinking too and doing other like coping mechanisms that weren't really healthy. The end of grade 12, so like June, I was having real bad bouts of depression and stuff. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't go to school and stuff like that. And then, all through my 20s and stuff, I just kept drinking and got introduced to like marijuana and had a couple, I guess you could say, traumatic events in my life and stuff too. And that kind of all contributed to stuff. And then in my family, anger is a big issue. So like in my late 20s, it was like my anxiety and depression was turning more into like anger. So it was, a lot of men deal with that. They say anger is anxiety's bodyguard. So I was, just a real prick, I guess you could say. I was drinking and using lots and doing stuff I was like outside of my moral compass, I would say. As coping mechanisms, I needed, instant gratification. So I was, not a great father, not a great husband, not a good employee, not a good son. Like I was just kind of a miserable SOB. And it kind of came to a head after I had a suicide attempt, and I ended up in the hospital for a couple of weeks. But then even after that, then some of the stuff came out of to my wife and to my family about some of the stuff I was doing that was outside of my moral compass, and they started to do their own research about depression and anxiety, so my wife could understand better what I was feeling and why I was doing the things I was doing and whatever. So a couple of years went by, and it was still not great. I was still drinking and using and stuff. And one day I was reading the news, and there was an article about the psych ward that I was in. So then there was something like 12 or 18 people were being laid off from the psych ward that I was working at. And I was like, and like 12 of the positions were like psych nurses. And I was like, what the hell? Like I was in there, like I know how overworked they are and stuff. So I got really pissed off, and I wrote this letter, and it was kind of like a coming out letter. I live in a small town, a coming out letter of sorts of, my suicide attempts and my mental health issues and stuff. And it kind of blew up. It was been shared like 100,000 times, this letter. Media from like all types of media, TV and news and stuff, they all came out to my house and were interviewing me because this letter blew up. And so then I kind of just got thrown into this advocacy role, which wasn't helpful for my mental health because I was already not feeling great. And so now I kind of put this added pressure on myself that, now that I have people's attention, I want to keep going with it. So after a couple months of that, I kind of had another little break and realized maybe I'm an alcoholic and I'm high 24 hours a day for like 3 years straight. So, so then I went through addiction treatment, and that kind of helped with that. um, and then, I just kept advocating after that and doing speaking, and spoke at a lot of addiction treatment place that I went to, and to some schools and stuff. Sorry, this is the real Cliff Notes version. I mean, we can get into it more later, but
Yeah, we will.
and then I started a kids book. Actually, the night I quit drinking was the first draft of the kids book I wrote, called "Sometimes Daddy Cries." It was almost set up to be like a suicide note. I was so drunk and high, I don't really even remember, but I typed it up, a draft on my computer, and then I was either gonna off myself or wake up my wife. And thankfully I woke up my wife. I have very little memory of doing this, but anyway, so then she took me to the hospital, and that was the beginning of my addiction recovery. But anyway, once I got sober, I started doing more advocating and stuff, and it's just kind of been going from there. And finally, 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with ADHD, which has been huge and has explained a lot of my anxiety, a lot of my depression, a lot of my addiction issues was because of untreated ADHD. So my journey continues.
Yeah. So how long do you think it took before they properly diagnosed you with ADHD? Do you think you had it, since you were a kid, or do you think those symptoms came as like an onset?
No, they say ADHD. It's like a hardwired. It's not like
Okay, so you can't really develop it. Okay.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it could be more prominent as an adult if you've been not treated or diagnosed earlier. So that's kind of what happened to me, I guess. It was like, and like because of like TikTok and things like that, I learned a lot more about ADHD, and I was like, holy shit, like I related. So I kind of reached out. It took about 2 years to get the assessment, because I kept getting bounced around from doctors to my psychiatrist to finally psychologist, and and it cost like $2,000. So then I had to apply for some grant to pay for it and all this stuff. But so anyway, now I'm on meds and I'm cured.
That's awesome. Great.
Well,
Yeah. I'm sure it helps at least. Yeah.
You're getting better. You're on the road to,
Yeah, sometimes it just takes a long time to find the right treatment, right? Like for your whole life, you could think that you're a certain way, but it turns out you have something else. And
Exactly. Yeah, I felt like I was untreatable. Like I'd been to tons of therapists and counselors and medications and stuff, and now it's like I finally feel like I'm on the right treatment. I'm on the right medication. My anxiety is actually getting better.
so
Yeah,
can
thanks.
you like describe what it feels like to have ADHD? Like what are the feelings that you have throughout the day, for example? Just so, like you said, you saw on TikTok other people that feel that way. Maybe you could kind of show what that feels like to other people as well.
Yeah. I had the stereotypical ADHD view. Like you always think of like the super hyper kid in class when you were a kid. That's what I thought ADHD was, but that was also me. But it was internal hyperactivity. Like it's like the thoughts just kept going, which is basically that's what anxiety kind of is, right? You just kind of you start to spiral and you start to internalize everything. You overthink. You can't make decisions. There's a thing called ADHD paralysis, which I totally relate with, where you can just like you just zone out and you're just on your phone scrolling for like hours, but inside you're like beating yourself up. Like I've got this to do today. Why I haven't? It's 2 years. I haven't painted this. The bathroom. I haven't done this. I have I only have a few days off of work to get all this stuff done, and I'm just sitting here scrolling. And I'm such a piece of shit. I'm so lazy. I'm such an idiot. But to the outside, other people looking at you, you're just sitting there scrolling on your phone, right? So then all that beating up in your brain, all that talk causes anxiety, causes depression, because, you're a product of your environment, including your internal environment. So, and stuff like forgetfulness and brain fog. And mine is, one of my bad symptoms is my working memory. So it's like short-term memory. So if someone says, hey, my phone number is 345-2177, like, psh, I'm no idea. I have no idea what you just said to me. Yeah, no idea what you just said to me. Or if I'm learning a job, which is another thing, I don't have a career because I quit jobs every 2 years, which is
Oh, okay.
kind of a very common thing with people with ADHD too. They either get bored or upset, or for whatever reason, I quit jobs. But when I'm learning a new job, it's like oral instructions I have to have repeated quite a few times because I'll forget, or stuff like that. Stuff that I had no idea that was ADHD symptoms. Because really it's really only in the last 15 years they've done a lot more research and stuff on ADHD. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, ADHD is something that's not always well understood. I think it also gets thrown around, just, oh, I got ADHD. Oh, I'm hyperactive. But
Yeah.
maybe you are. Maybe you're just, maybe just a bit hyperactive, but doesn't mean, you have that deep issues with anxiety and also the fact where you're saying you're just like scrolling on TikTok, right? Because there's like so much to do when you get overwhelmed and you just procrastinate. But then that just fuels more of your anxiety, and then the world just becomes more and more overwhelming, and it doesn't
Exactly.
seem feasible. Like, how do I get myself out of this hole? It's because you constantly lived with it, right? How did it also affect your relationship with the people you love the most, right? Because it's something that we're dealing with, but then that also externally affects the people around us. How did it affect people around you?
Partly because partly the addiction stuff, right? Because I think ADHD people, I don't know the exact stats, but they're more likely to have addiction issues. So then, the addiction issues will definitely affect your relationship. Like I said, I was doing things outside my moral compass for a few years in all aspects of my life. So there's that. There's also like this. I get hyper focus. So a lot of people think that ADHD is like you're always distracted, but quite often it's actually you get hyper focused. So you can't
Yeah.
do something. I'm supposed to be doing this, but I can't stop doing this. So between leaving jobs all the time, that's pretty stressful on my wife. Hyper focusing on new hobbies all the time. So I don't just kind of have a hobby. It's like when I get a hobby, it's like I buy everything I need for that hobby, and I do it hard for like 2 years, and then I drop it. So then,
Yeah.
So I've played in bands and had tons of gear. So I mean, I'm pretty sure she's, I'm sure she wants to pull her hair out sometimes, but getting the diagnosis also helps, my relationship with my wife, because now she understands it better, and just, we both kind of just accept it. And, but that's also some of the fun stuff about having ADHD, is that you are creative and you are impulsive, and you can pick up different talents really quick and stuff. So, I mean, yeah, some of it's fun, some of it's hard to live with, definitely.
Yeah. There's always a good and a bad side to everything, right? I mean, if you wouldn't be the same person as you are today if you didn't have those issues. Obviously,
Yeah.
we will wish you not to have them, but
Yeah.
it still makes you you in that
It defines
sense.
your personality. I mean, I don't think we need
Yeah.
to demean people or say they're better or worse. It's
Yeah.
just, that's just how the way they vibe in the world, and they have certain difficulties and struggles, but they can learn to live with it, or, better themselves.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's one thing I found with my ADHD all through life, is like I feel like I don't fit in society. It's like, why can't we all just? I don't want to work a 9 to 5. I want to be an artist, and I want to be this. Why can't we
Or
all just
creative.
be hippies? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like
I feel the same.
Yeah, we don't all need to fit in the mold, to be accepted. And I think also maybe part of your show is that, right? To, make people feel more accepted of who they are, even though they deal with these issues, you are
That's
still a human to be,
Yeah.
respected.
Yeah.
Yeah. I try to interview people that and be like judgment free, right? It's more it's out of a curiosity based thing. So whether they've done bad things or whatever, they're like I've interviewed someone that was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, and And online, when you say narcissist now, it's like narcissistic abuse and all this stuff.
Hate. Yeah.
But yeah. So I push that judgment aside and just find out more about it, and then you realize, oh, this disorder comes from trauma. This person is, there are people too that are suffering trauma, and it just, for whatever reason, mine came out in whatever depression, anxiety. Theirs came out in narcissistic personality disorder, and not to say that you're not responsible for your disorder now. Like my addiction, I had to nip that in the bud, or otherwise I was going to keep hurting people around me. And same with narcissistic personality disorder. But if you're treated and you've been diagnosed, and we're all just people that got hurt at some point in our life, and we're dealing with it in different ways.
Doesn't mean you're a bad person if you had trauma, right? Like
exactly.
You just that's kind of like the burden you have, and that's kind of how your body kind of and your mind kind of adapts and wants to, get rid of all that trauma and kind of just react in that way.
You also learn to take responsibility of your own actions and your feelings, and you don't just then throw it. Oh, I have ADHD. I can't help myself. This is who I am.
Yeah, got to take accountability at some point too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially with the disorder, because most disorders are treatable. Like I said, ADHD is it's hardwired, it's not like software, but you can learn strategies and you can improve things you don't like about it. But yeah, with disorders, like once you're diagnosed, then I feel like you do have this responsibility to take the treatment and try to better yourself now that you got the diagnosis.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Well, for me, for example, I know this is not really the same, but I have Crohn's, so again, kind of with the stomach, intestinal issues and all, and yeah, same thing. There's no way around Crohn's. Like I'm gonna have it for life, but there's still ways that I could kind of circumvent those problems and take accountability in how I go by my day-to-day life and try to get better, right? Not necessarily just accept it. All right, I have Crohn's and I'm fucked. It's not really the attitude to have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, precisely. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's our brain. It's still a physical thing, and we can deal with it. So.
Exactly, it is a physical thing.
Yeah,
and I feel like a lot of times people do kind of neglect the mental health, and they always focus on the physical, and the mental health is also so important, right? Because we know that the mind, the body, they all kind of work together, and if you neglect one, then the other one is going to suffer, right? So kind of goes back to that addiction thing, right? If you're going through addiction, and your body's not going to be right, your mind's not going to be at the right place, and everything starts to fall apart, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, that's right. It's the mind, body, spirit balance.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah. Well, what's mental health services like in Quebec? Are they lacking like everywhere else?
Well, that's actually one of our questions that we're going to ask you. Like,
okay.
what is your thoughts on just in Canada in general, right? Like, do you think the government is kind of neglecting the mental health, advocacy and just help in general for people that are struggling with that?
I mean, I do. Like every province does have its own health care budgets and stuff, so I think it differs from province to province. You always hear how British Columbia has a pretty good system, but then I've talked to people from British Columbia and they're like, it's shit here too. So it's like, okay, if the best system we have in Canada is shit, then what's the worst system we have? It's super shit.
Exactly. Like that's the consensus I'm getting across, people from Canada. Like I know, like for me, like I said, I don't suffer from mental health issues, but like I have Crohn's, and just trying to find help for my Crohn's, it's like it's a maze trying to, find the right specialist, find the right doctor to talk to. It takes so long, and there's always a problem. So I could imagine it's also the same for mental health.
Yeah. Like I said, for my ADHD, it took me 2 years just to get assessed.
Even more.
Yeah, and I know people, like when I first started seeing a psychiatrist, which was about 10 years ago, it was a 1 year wait. So my doctor gave me the numbers, like, here, call this specialist, which is a psychiatrist. I'm like, okay. So then I called and they're like, okay, we'll call you back in about a year. I'm like, a year? Like, what the fuck is that going to do? Like, I'm depressed and suicidal right now. Like, what the fuck am I? Right. So then I just never, I just never called back. And actually one of the reasons I started advocating too was, I actually drove myself to the hospital at one point. with I was in a mental health crisis, and I drove from my small town to the city of Regina into the hospital, and which was really it was tough to do as a man. Like I don't want to make this a gender thing, but as a man who's from a small town in the prairies, to say, holy shit, I have a mental health issue, I need help. That's a rare thing. So it was like, okay, I'm stepping out of my comfort zone here, and I'm actually going to ask for help for my brain. And I drove to Regina, and I was suicidal. I went into the emergency room, and I sat there for hours, and people came in and out every 20 minutes and asked me the same 15 questions. And then finally someone came in who was a psychiatrist and basically said, well, did you attempt suicide? And I was like, no, but I want to die. And he's like, well, okay, well, unless you've committed suicide, we can't bring you into the hospital.
That's wild.
I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So
Like,
he
how
said,
do you?
I find that,
That's
Yeah.
insane. Like,
So
how do
then-
you what do you tell them? Like, you have to tell them exactly what you attempted. Was that what they're expecting?
I guess so I was like, well, yeah, okay, I have an attempt. He's like, do you have a plan? I'm like, I have like 10 plans. Like, it depends where I am in the day. You know what I mean? And he's like, okay, well, just promise me you won't hurt yourself. Keep taking your meds. I was already on meds. Keep seeing your counselor, bye. I'm like, okay. So then I felt really embarrassed. I felt embarrassed that I went to the hospital because, like I said, it took a lot for me to actually ask for help just to be told.
And they just shunned you.
Yeah, it was like, oh, you're just being silly. Go home. That's what it felt like, right? So I was like, holy shit. So then I stopped asking for help. So for the next year, I just spiraled downwards to the point that I did have a suicide attempt. I ended up having like 3 police officers grapple me, and I tried to stab my brother, and it just turned into a shit show. So then it was almost exactly a year later. I'm back in the hospital, this time handcuffed in an ambulance with the police, carrying me into the hospital. And then they're like, even then I could hear them in the other room, wondering if they should let me have a room in the hospital.
So even after all that, they were still
They
contemplating
were
if
still
they should let you in.
questioning. if
They
they
were
should.
wondering, like, maybe they should just charge him with, resisting arrest
Attempted.
and all this other stuff. And they were like, so you were going to put me in jail for the weekend instead? That was the other option instead of just giving me the
that's
fucking help I
nuts.
asked for a year ago. I was going to say that was like 10 years ago. And then I did a lot of advocating, and we ended up getting a mental health minister that I helped petition for. And there was rallies and stuff. So mental health became, a more talked about thing in my province. But 2 years ago, I was like a university kid, went to the same hospital I went to in Regina. Same thing happened to him. He left. An hour later, he was found floating in the Regina Creek because he took his life. Like, so nothing's changed. Nothing's changed? Like, what?
Yeah.
Why? So
Wasn't
that was
the
pretty
hospital
discouraging.
Ashamed from that? Did they?
Oh, they got sued, yeah. Because
Yeah?
security actually took him out, kicked him out, because he was having like a psychotic episode, and he was like, he was being weird. He was having a psychotic episode. He was suicidal and stuff, and they just
And they pushed him out.
they pushed him out, and an hour later he's found dead. But they're the governments are both federal, provincial governments are always patting each other on the back about how much more money they're putting into mental health and stuff, but they're not listening to the people, the boots on the ground, saying where to put the money, because that's against their ideology or whatever. Well, I'm wearing a shirt right now. This is for harm reduction. So there's a place in Saskatoon. It's a safe injection site and a harm reduction place, and it doesn't matter what political party, everybody's donating to them, but the government will not give them a cent because it's against their ideology. And we're in the middle of a fentanyl crisis in Saskatchewan. I mean, the last 3 years we've broke records on overdoses in the province, but yet they just keep putting more treatment beds open. But if you're dead,
don't
you can't
need
go
it
to
anymore.
treatment. So anyway,
so what
sorry,
is-
I'm getting all hot.
Don't worry,
No, it's
it's
okay.
good.
We like it.
Let it out.
Yeah, let it. we want the raw, opinions. But I just want to understand. So the reason they don't, want to admit you until you've reached that last point of attempting suicide, what is the reason? Is it a lack of, just resources?
Yeah, they're like because the first time I went, they said like our beds are all full, So that's how
Okay.
many people had attempted suicide, I guess, recently. It was to the point that the beds were full. Yeah, and so I ended up meeting because of that meeting, I ended up meeting the CEO of the health region, and he said, yeah, this like, even he said like, yeah, it's bullshit. Like I had to lay off all these people, which is part of that letter I wrote and stuff. And he's like, what can I do? My hands are tied. Like I've only got so much budget, and we only have so many beds. And I thought, but so then I said, okay, well maybe I didn't need the hospital, but there was no other, like, it's either you're at home or you're in the hospital. There's no in between services
Yeah.
that you could say, like, maybe here's an outpatient service you could do, maybe go there every day and have these courses or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? There was just nothing. Just go home and keep doing what you're doing. That was the option.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, why only the hospital? Shouldn't there be other sorts of therapy,
Yeah.
counseling, or just groups that you can join?
Some kind of support at least. I
Yeah,
mean,
some sort of support group. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
it's
Bananas.
weird because it's almost like they're almost like normalizing, having those suicidal thoughts. Like you go to the hospital, it's like not enough for them. Like, okay, you're having these suicidal thoughts. It's not, convincing enough. You need to like,
Did you
Hack
try?
your
to
did you
kill
try
yourself?
it? Like
Yeah, yeah.
that sounds like ridiculous to me.
Oh, like, but what if I'm successful?
Yeah, exactly. What if you are successful and
So
obviously
you want me to fail trying to kill myself, for then for you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
That's
then,
wild.
I tell people all the time, like, you either have to use the right language to be able to get in, or the night I quit drinking and I ended up in the hospital again, I just went to my local small town hospital because I knew the psych ward was in Regina, so I was like, okay, that's where I go because that's where the mental health facility is. Little did I know, like, I could just go to my local hospital here, just 4 blocks from my house, and I know all the nurses. They're from town. Some of them I went to school with in high school and stuff, and they took way better care of me there than just sitting in the psych ward in Regina. Because even if they wouldn't have room, they would still bring me in because I'm part of the community. They know who I am. You know what I mean? So I tell people all the time, if you're from a small town, you're having a mental health crisis, just go to your hospital in town. Don't bother going to the big city thinking you need the psych ward.
Special help or
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know what, but yeah, sometimes you just need someone to listen, right? Someone to like care and want to just show
Yeah.
that they care.
Yeah, it was it last May I think it was last May. I spent a night in the hospital here locally, and it was just a panic attack really. They just said, yeah, just chill out here, and they gave me a room, and
Okay.
again, I knew all the nurses, I knew all the doctors. They're part of my community, and the next day they're like, do you want to spend another day or how you doing? I was like, no, I think I can go home now. I was like, but it was good. I was somewhere safe. I just, I didn't need 2 weeks. I didn't need meds changed. I didn't need a whole thing. I just, I had a panic attack and I didn't feel safe at home. So they let me chill out there. And I was like, if I went to Regina and did the same thing, they would have just sent me home. I would have sat for hours in the waiting room and probably just
For nothing.
been sent home. Yeah. So yeah, go
Yeah.
to your small town hospitals if you have one.
That's good
Which
advice.
goes to show that it doesn't always take some crazy treatment to help someone. Like I said, just let them have a safe space that they can be in.
Yeah.
And have caring people around.
Yeah, sometimes just talking to someone and having people around you is like one of the best treatments you could get. Really.
And so yeah, and then when I was there, I talked to the doctor. He was like, okay, maybe we should hook you up with. Maybe you should see a counselor again and stuff. So then I kind of reset my mental health plan a little bit, but I didn't. But yeah, it wasn't like this because I think a lot of people they're worried about that too. If they go to the hospital, it turns into this big catastrophe and like the whole family freaks out and
Yeah.
and it's like, and people are calling the ambulance and stuff. And I think that's why a lot of people won't say they're having suicidal ideation or suicidal thoughts because
There's so much panic.
which
created.
is good in a way, but I mean, I had suicidal thoughts every day for 10 years. So so it sounds big to someone who doesn't have them, but to someone who has them every day, it's like, it's not that, I don't want to minimize it, but it's not that big a deal. it's when you
Yeah.
start. It's when I was started to like obsess about suicidal ideation. When I started making plans, when I started, that kind of stuff, then it got serious. But if someone asked me if I was having suicidal thoughts, I'd just, yeah, every day.
Yeah,
It's not that big a deal.
normality. Mm.
Oh wow.
So that you're scared to say that because then people will freak out and call ambulances, and then it's. But yeah,
Like a big scene.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it's weird, man. It's not an exact science, and everybody's different, and every different things work on different people, and so it's complicated. It's not like a blood test, and okay, here's this medication, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's
Maybe
the
a little bit
frustrating
about that.
part.
What kind of medication do they give for people that suffer from ADHD?
Well, I'm on something called Concerta, and it is a stimulant. I think most ADHD meds are stimulants, which sounds weird. Like,
Yeah.
if you already kind of,
Yeah.
have the the hyper part, then why give them a stimulant? But for whatever reason, it helps. It works. Yeah, it stops the internal dialogue, and it's like, I just do stuff, and at the end of the day, it's like, whoa, I did stuff today, and I didn't freak out about the process beforehand or anything. I just did it.
Yeah.
It's so subtle. It's so weird.
When I went to university, I know some people they were throwing around like ADHD medication in schools too to like study longer and that stuff. What do you think about that? Like,
Oh,
do you
yeah?
think that should be? Yeah,
Oh, they did that?
yeah.
Oh,
Some
yeah,
people,
people
some
abuse it.
students, yeah, definitely some
Like
students.
a drug to
Yeah,
boost
they just
their...
stare at the paper for longer, study for longer. It's bad.
Oh.
Like it's pretty
Yeah.
rampant in schools right now.
Well, it's like
didn't know
meth or
that.
cocaine. It's a stimulant, and you can definitely abuse it. Like when I just picked some up this morning, picked up my new prescription. Like I have to sign for it every time, so that they
yeah.
know who has it in the community and stuff. And so if they pick up some kid in high school that doesn't have ADHD, but they have stimulants in their pocket, then they know, who's a possible dealer and stuff. But the thing is, so I just interviewed someone. She's an ADHD coach, and she made a really great point. She said ADHD meds are not addicting to people who have ADHD because they take it and they just feel normal.
Right.
Okay.
But if you don't have ADHD and you take it, yeah, it's like doing cocaine or meth or whatever. And it's a stimulant.
Okay, yeah, I see it. So people who have ADHD, it sort of brings them back to balance, to this homeostasis. Whereas people who are, normal and they take that, then it puts them off balance, and that's
Yeah.
when I guess.
Yeah, they get hooked.
Which makes
Yeah.
sense. It's a
Yeah.
serious drug. You can't just willy nilly.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, there's so many meds out there you can abuse. This is just another one, but yeah, I don't know too many people with ADHD that would want to abuse it because then they just feel like shit again, right? It's just like not taking your meds because then you start getting too stimulated, and then it's not a party. But yeah, I know. I worked at the treatment center for 2 years. The treatment center I ended up going to, and I met all types. So this was before I knew I had ADHD. But so many of the clients in there did have ADHD, and they were addicted to stimulants. So they were, you can't get addicted to your medication, but you can get addicted to meth and coke because at first you do feel normal because you're doing a stimulant, but it's a street drug, right? So then it's not like a nice medication. So
Isn't there like an increased risk for like children that are on ADHD medication to eventually become like addicts in the future with like all these uppers and methamphetamine and all these other drugs?
I'm not too sure about that. If
Okay.
I
Maybe,
feel like
maybe
it
not,
would
but-
more like if you weren't taking medication as a kid, maybe you'd want the stimulants because you crave that stimulants. Maybe I have no idea. I'm not sure.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the point.
I just wanted to.
I thought you were the smart one.
Well,
Yeah,
I found out I'm not.
we established that before recording. I just had a question. So now that you are on the road to just getting better, you understand that you have ADHD and you're taking these meds and your anxiety is under more control. So you said that for like almost a decade, you were having like suicide thoughts really almost every day. So right now, speaking now, when was the last time that you had a thought like that? Has it been a long time
This
that you
morning.
had? Oh, really?
So they come all the
Wow.
time. Yeah.
Okay, so it is a.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, it's just a thought. It's nothing serious. It's not. It's like, it's nothing. It's nothing to get up in arms about. But I've for whatever reason, the last couple of weeks, I have been struggling a little bit with my anxiety and stuff. And I don't know if it's situational or if I've just gotten used to my dosage of meds. So then things are need tweaking or what. But yeah, I mean, I still get suicidal thoughts, not every day. And it's like, I mean, now I'll go like, I can go months without having them. But
That's
just,
good.
That's better, yeah.
yeah. And for whatever reason, this last week, it's just been like, I think it is more situational. Like, for whatever reason, I can't deal with stress. So then, for whatever, so then I slip into old coping mechanisms a little bit, except for the drinking. Taking out the booze and the weed and everything, like being sober, like that's huge. I mean, that's like 90% of my mental health problems too were solved because of that ish. But the suicidal thoughts, it's really, it's so hard to explain. It's not a serious thought, but yet I have them. It's more like, oh, I wish I could just win the lottery. It's kind of like that. It's like, it's never going to happen, right? It's not, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I may as well take myself out because life sucks and this last week's been shitty and so it's
It's not like
you know
a
what I mean?
serious contemplation. It's more just like the frustration or just the overwhelmed feeling where you just want to end it all. Can I just like turn off a switch quickly? Just, can I?
Yeah, and it's not even like because I mean that's also a spectrum too. Suicidal thoughts. It could be it's not just I want to kill myself. It could be like I wish I could just disappear, or I hope tonight, or I hope I don't wake up tomorrow. Like I just want to, or I just want to run away. Like I wish I could just pause the world and not exist for a few months. While crazy shit settles and stuff. So it's that's kind of the one side of the spectrum, and then the other spectrum is like, yeah, I can't deal with life anymore, and I want to take my life, right? So, so when you say suicidal thoughts, it's anywhere in that spectrum for me, anyway.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, this last week I've had thoughts once in a while, but I also I also have better coping mechanisms now, and I'm aware of my thoughts a lot more so now. I have tools now, so like it's like, oh shit, I'm having this thought now, and I can observe the thought. I don't have to dive into that thought. I don't. It's just because I'm having a thought doesn't mean it's
Take action.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah. Actually, I was just watching Drag Race this morning with RuPaul, and he was talking about feelings. He's like, don't let feelings screw the situations up for you. Just because you're having feelings doesn't mean that's what's actually happening. Just because you're having these thoughts and these feelings doesn't mean that's exactly reality. You just process those feelings and go, you recognize them, observe them, process them, and go on with reality. So,
Yeah.
so because of all the shit I've been through, I can do that. It's like I can have a suicidal thought and just that's it. It's just a thought. It's nothing.
And still
It's
move
just a thought.
forward with your life.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, I guess, like the amount of trauma that we've dealt with in our past. Sometimes like the soul just yearns to just rest, to like reset and because
not
it's
even
just
necessarily die. Just I want to hibernate for 6 months.
Yeah, hibernate, but sometimes
Can it be like an inanimate object for like 5 months or something?
Can I just get frozen? Like those when they try to freeze humans.
Yeah. Time or something. Yeah.
Futurama.
Yeah.
No, but I definitely understand, and I think that kind of clears up the idea of suicidal thoughts and maybe the panic that friends and families might get. You might say, I'm having suicidal thought. Oh my God, call the ambulance, call this intervention. But it's like, no, I want to pause. Like, I just want to, take some time off. And it doesn't always necessarily mean I'm going to, kill myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's for me, right? I mean, some people, maybe it's different. It depends how much.
But it's varied, the experience. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like I've done enough healing now that like I said, I can just see, I can observe that thought, appreciate it, and just take it as a thought and not, yeah, make it my reality. Yeah.
It's hard. It must be hard to explain to someone that doesn't have those thoughts what it is to have them, right? Like it must be like making them understand something that they just don't understand fully or they don't comprehend properly. And to them,
It
it
is.
sounds jarring, and it's like, oh, this person wants to kill himself. But if it's something you're feeling every day, then it's part of your normal. But them, they're not feeling it, so it must be hard to kind of communicate that with them.
Yeah, to kind of comprehend. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, last spring when I spent the night in the hospital, and I was only there for a night because of a panic attack. Part of the panic attack was I was having suicidal thoughts again, but they were scary. So if I do have a suicidal thought, it's not scary. That it's like, okay, it's just I'm doing the process. I'm processing it. I'm observing it. I'm appreciating it, or maybe not appreciating, but I'm like, okay, there. It's just a thought, off it goes. But when it becomes an option, that's when it gets scary. That's like, that suicidal thought became an option. Like I could do this. It's like, oh wait, I actually considered that an option for a second. But again, I've done enough healing that I was still aware and still recognized, oh shit, I'm considering this an option. Whereas before I would just compulsively keep thinking about it and come up with plans and yada yada. So then, yeah, I went to the hospital right away. I was like, I'm freaking out, and then I chilled out for a day and was like, okay, I've reset and I've got a new mental health plan.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not cured, right? This shit's going to keep coming up throughout my life, but I'm able to treat myself in a way. I'm just, take my own treatment because I've
You're
done enough.
self-aware and mindful of your
Exactly.
Yeah.
thoughts.
I
Yeah,
think that's the
yeah.
goal with any illness, is just to be mindful about it and keep working at it so it doesn't resurface. That's my
Don't neglect.
advice, dealing with another kind of
A physical
illness and physical more than mental. But yeah, that's what it is. You just have to be on top of it all the time, and obviously don't take yourself too seriously. Also, like you said, like these thoughts, these always kind of resurface, but they don't necessarily mean anything. You're not going to go through with these, so they're not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
I am not my thoughts. Sometimes I wish I was, because man, I have cool thoughts. Not just shitty ones. So it's like, damn, I wish those thoughts were real.
Yeah.
We understand that. Yeah. I just wanted to one last point regarding this talk on suicidal thoughts. Like, what would be your advice if like someone might have for the first time or for the first few times they're having thoughts like this? Should they immediately seek help?
Well, I would say, yeah, like maybe make a doctor's appointment. It doesn't have to be run to the ER. You don't have to start calling psychiatrists, but I'd make a doctor's appointment. Talk with your family doctor about options of maybe seeing counselors or therapists, or like, why am I having these thoughts? Because everybody has them for different reasons. Some people it's just in their DNA, right, to self-destruct. Some people it's because of trauma. Other people it's because of guilt or shame or whatever. So because there's so many different reasons why you could have suicidal thoughts, there's endless amounts of treatments and medications and ways to go about figuring out why you're having them. So, I mean, for me, I'm just at that stage where I'm able to, well, not really even. I'm at that stage where I can kind of give my own treatment, but only a year ago I needed help. So, again, I would definitely, explore why am I having these thoughts, and in doing so, you need some professional help, maybe medication, maybe not, maybe it's just a peer group. I don't know, but also remember that it is just a thought. You are not your thoughts. Unless you're really, really, really scared, then you'd go maybe to the hospital. Again, don't expect don't expect to be staying there for 2 weeks. Hopefully they help you come up with a mental health plan, or see a social worker or something. But definitely explore why you're having those thoughts with a professional, I'd say.
So it's better to take it a bit more seriously and not, just let it
Neglect it,
Neglect it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Especially middle-aged men, because I mean, the number one killer in middle-aged men right now is suicide, and I think a lot of dudes don't go to the hospital.
Because
To-
they
Yeah,
wanna
it's not the manly thing. It's not the
the macho
Yeah.
thing.
the macho, the ego that kind of comes in the way and be like, okay, I'm not gonna go see a hospital. I'm supposed to be tough, but
Yeah, why am I such a pussy then? And
yeah, exactly.
But-
All those thoughts.
which was the most dangerous thing that happened to me was going to the hospital, because then they made me feel like a pussy because they were like,
Yeah, that sucks.
so I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
That's the bad thing. That you reached out, for help, and that's
Yeah.
what the help did to you. But
So yeah, that was
That's-
another big. Yeah, that's another huge reason why I started doing the advocating too. Is like once I was able to process that whole situation, be like, that's pretty fucked up. That shouldn't be like that.
we
yeah.
need change, and I think
Yeah.
you're doing good with that.
and I mean, I've heard that story a million times from people
yeah.
all over the
Okay.
country. I like that story is not rare.
We wanted to also talk about your book, right? And you did mention in the beginning about it. Children's book that you wrote called sometimes Daddy Cries. And tying back,
There it
there
is,
it is.
yeah.
It's the only
Nice.
copy I have. I
Proof
keep
of
it nearby.
concept.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
And to tie back to just what we mentioned of how men, they don't want to seek help, or they don't want to express their emotions and their feelings. It is a vulnerable title, and how did you choose that title, and what is the book about, or what is the story inside the book?
Yeah, I chose that title because it is kind of. I wouldn't say. I don't know what was the word you used.
Vulnerable.
Yeah, it is vulnerable. It is like, huh? It is kind of like, it takes you back a little bit. And I wrote it. Well, I kind of wrote it because I didn't do the things I want people to do in the book. This is like I learned the hard way. It's like this is a better guide. So it's a kid watching his dad go through depression, and he just talks about how his dad will get sad, and he keeps well, just like Evan, the kid keeps comparing it to having a stomach ache, because every kid knows what it's like to have a stomach ache. So, sometimes I need rest and I can't get out of bed because I have a stomach ache, just like Daddy does when he's feeling sad, kind of thing. One time I had to go to the hospital because my stomach was so bad, and one time Daddy had to have a hospital stay, and Daddy takes medication, just like I had to take medicine for my tummy aches and stuff like that. So it really makes that connection to kids, or makes it relatable for kids, and and for moms, he talks about sometimes when Dad's resting or in the hospital, life goes on, and we worry about him, but I try not to worry too much. So then he plays with his dog, and he does other things. He visits grandma while Dad's in the hospital, and that's what my kids did when I was in the hospital. They stayed with grandma once in a while. So yeah, I just try to make it. I try to make it real, but not devastating. It is a kid's book, but I didn't want to make it so fluffy that it's like, that they don't they make it so fluffy that it's just fluffy. Right? So it was hard kind of riding that line between fluffy and making it, scary. Right. So I think I wrote that line pretty good. So, but it was funny because I wrote it for kids, but so many mothers buy it, and they've actually said this book actually helped my husband, who's suffering, because like we were talking about, a lot of men have trouble admitting or accepting having these issues. So and it also helps sometimes mothers, because they don't understand what their husband's going through either. So
Yeah. True.
so yeah, that was kind of a thing I never thought about, but it ended
That's
up happening.
great, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not proud of a lot of things, but I'm proud of that book.
Oh man, I mean,
great,
we're
man.
proud of it
Yeah.
too. I think
Yeah,
that's a
thanks.
great way to go about it. Children's book, yeah, I wouldn't have thought. I mean, it's a nice angle to take, and it also
Yeah.
helps children to, just be more understanding of what their parents deal with, because sometimes kids might think, oh, my parents are the superheroes in my life and they don't have any
Right.
Yeah.
problems,
That's right.
which is okay, you don't want your child to know all the problems that you're dealing with. Sometimes you put on kind of an armor and say, I'm there for you, but it's okay to let them know that even daddy can be vulnerable sometimes, and that's part of life.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So yeah, that's one thing I was thinking of. Like, so kids can have empathy for their parents for when they're having issues, but also to normalize mental health issues. And because there is still a bit of a stigma where it's like hush hush, like, oh, we don't talk about, you know, I don't know, if, like when I was a kid, it was like, oh, our great auntie was in, she had bipolar. It was like this big hush hush thing in the
Taboo.
family.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, what the fuck? Who cares? It's just like having a stomach ache. Who gives a shit? Like, whatever. Let's talk about it. And so, yeah, hopefully, kids that read the book or like go into life thinking that it's just like having a stomach ache. Whatever. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, it's weird that we kind of like differentiate it, right? It's like we think as like the brain as like something separate from the body almost. Like everyone normalizes a stomach ache, but no one normalizes, like the mental health issues. And it's like you said, it's just like anything else. And you could have like a sore foot. Well, okay, like there's something else going on. Like with my mental health, it's the same kind of concept, which I think is going to hopefully eventually become more normalized and people understand it more and more.
Yeah, I think even with the ADHD symptoms and stuff, it's like for the longest time it almost felt like a character flaw, like it was a decision, or it was like why can't you just do this, you dork, like cheer up, and that kind of stuff. It's like
it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no, it's not a character flaw. It's just a thing. It's just like a physical ailment. You have Crohn's. It's not like, hey, come on, stop having stomach aches, dummy.
Let's digest properly, right? Like,
Come on, loser, digest.
Yeah, exactly.
Quit being so lazy and digest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's exactly it, man.
Yeah. I think maybe it's just a different understanding of how the brain works and how the body works. They think, oh, you have a pain in your body, you didn't control that just happened. But if you have an issue in your mind, you're able to control that. So toughen up and, change that. But it's not always, the brain is also an organ and it wants to work a certain way, and it makes you, perceive.
I feel like out of all things, like I feel like the brain would be the hardest one to control anyways, right? Like brain is so complex and there's so much going on. Like there's bound to be, it can't be that easy to like control it and be like, okay, I just want it to work this way and that's it, know?
Yeah, if that was the situation, we'd all be millionaires and
exactly.
We'd all be living our best lives there.
Big geniuses and
Oh, you're not an idiot. You're just lazy. Like, no, I'm an idiot. Oh wait.
Yeah, exactly. I'm learning issues. I can't learn as fast as the other guy who was a mad genius.
Yeah, learn faster. Like it doesn't make sense. You have to...
Well, maybe a question about like how is the reception been so far? Has it been positive with the book? Like, do you see some actual?
Yeah. I mean, so once I'm done a project, usually I'm just like, boop, I'm done. So I'm not an author. Like, I mean, I'm an author, but I'm not an author where it's like, now I'm going to go out and do book readings and promote my book. It's like, it's self-published. So there's that. It's like, I'm not good at PR. I'm not good at business side of anything. So, I've made my money back, but it wasn't about money, right? It was, it was about, awareness and stuff. But the thing I'm really proud of is like parents and professionals. Like I've got nothing but really great feedback. Like, I mean, people love it, and I've had friends that are like, "Oh, it should be part of the educational curriculum and stuff." I'm like, well, I have no idea how to do that. That doesn't sound like the fun. I like to create. I don't like to do the other. I don't like to do the work. I just like to do the fun part. So it's like, yeah, well, if you want to try to get the school division on board, you go ahead. But I wouldn't even know where to start. So
sometimes the school curriculum is going to be very tough to change.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think so. But yeah, I've had like psychologists buy like 10 or 12 copies just to have them in their office, and then they can hand them out to parents that they think would benefit from it or kids that would benefit from it. So I'm like, that's the biggest compliment to me. Like if professionals are buying it to give to their clients and they think because they think
Yeah.
it's that, helpful, then it's like, damn.
It's
Cool.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And my friend Jesse Stuick did the illustrations. I'm gonna,
Okay, cool.
I forget to mention her sometimes, but the
Little shout out,
illustrations are
yeah.
amazing. To me, it's
Yeah.
like get rid of all the words, just look at the pictures alone. They're amazing. But anyway,
Images worth
Yeah.
1,000 words. Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
There's probably
Well, yeah,
not even
so-
1,000 words in the entire book, but yeah, it's a kid's book.
But that's the thing. It doesn't need to be wordy to convey the message. Sometimes the images can also.
Yeah, that's what's beautiful. I think about a kid's book, right? Like
Yeah.
kids are not necessarily at the level to like understand hard text and hard sentences, whatever. But I feel like just the images could really paint a big like a picture for them, and they understand really the meaning just by the image. Which is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, kids they're more open to like they're not jaded already. It's like, that's bullshit. You don't need medicine to help that. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, or that guy's just being a pussy.
Yeah.
They they're more they're
Receptive.
Open.
yeah, more receptive and open to these kind of concepts. So, like people don't give kids enough credit. Like, so yeah, I mean, not that it's not age appropriate. It is age appropriate as far as I'm concerned, anyway. But
Okay.
so yeah, if teachers and professionals and psychologists like the book, then it must be good.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm
Yeah.
sure it is.
No, I think you resonated with people, and hopefully you keep selling more. I mean, your message spreads.
Well, I mean,
Wish you will.
it's not going anywhere. It'll be around for the rest of eternity. It'll be on the internet to buy.
Exactly.
Well, great. Yeah. So we've been going on for over an hour now, and we really appreciate you coming on. So keep doing what you're doing. It's with the podcast, the book, all that stuff. It's really awesome. Keep doing it. It's going to help a lot of people for sure. So can you
Thanks.
tell? Yeah, no problem.
You guys too.
Hey,
Thanks, man.
We'll
Appreciate
keep
it.
trying. Yeah. So, so can you tell everyone where they could find you on social media, where they could find your podcast, where they could buy your book?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram. That's kind of my favorite social media platform. It's Bunny Hugs Podcast. I'm on Facebook as well, Bunny Hugs Mental Health. The podcast, which is called Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, is on, I think it's pretty much on any major podcast platform. And the book it's on Amazon. If you just Google "Sometimes Daddy Cries," there's a whole bunch of places online that you can buy it. And yeah, I think I got everything there.
Cool.
That's great,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
And
We'll make
hopefully
sure
I get
to-
a YouTube channel sometime. But
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you know.
You'd
Why
be
not?
good. I think you'd fit the platform pretty well. I don't know if there's that many. I'm sure a lot of channels talk about mental health, but I think you have a pretty cool spin on
Yeah.
the whole thing. I think you would do well there.
thanks. Yeah, like on my episodes, I have video for, but like, I've only got so much time and energy, so I'm just storing them up for someday when I do have time and energy. I can release them.
You
on
post all
post
there.
them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, I see. Maybe before we close, like the name Bunny Hugs. How did that come about for your podcast?
Well, a lot of people don't realize this, but hoodies with the
Yeah.
hood.
Yeah.
So in Saskatchewan, they're called bunny hugs.
Oh
So-
wow. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted a little wink and nod to Saskatchewan. So yeah, it's a little. So people from Saskatchewan, they're like, "So you talk about mental health and sweaters?" Like,
Okay.
everyone else around the world, they're like, "Oh, that's kind of a cute name, I guess."
Yeah.
bunny
Yeah, I
hugs,
think that's how we looked at it. Like,
Oh, everyone needs a buddy hug.
Yeah, I
that's
get
gonna
it.
make them feel better.
yeah.
But yeah, it's a Saskatchewan little wink and nod joke, and I love it. I love the name. As soon as I came up with it, I'm like, yes, that's the fucking name right there.
That's a good name. Yeah.
And it confuses everyone. I love it.
Yeah. Our name is pretty confusing also. So
It was a little. I was trying to pronounce it out loud.
Curiousaholic, yeah.
Curioso-
I've had people say like curious alcoholic. I'm like, okay, sure.
Bi-curious alcoholic? What? What are you talking about on there?
Just drinking and we're just curious.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
love the name too. I love your guys' name. As soon as I
Cool.
saw it, I was like, okay, this is hard to say, but I like it. It's good.
Awesome.
Great.
All
Well,
right.
Todd,
Well,
thank
Todd,
you
yeah.
again for coming on. It was
My pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
great to talk to you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.